Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Bo.
Hare Krishna
Hare
Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. So we'll start with the prayers. I think there are still some devotees who are in the process of gathering. Never mind. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Om Ajnana Timirandasya Jnananjanachalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kada Mayam Dadati Supadantikam Vandeham Shri Guroho Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parjana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Saganadaita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Shibhanu Devi Pranamami Haripriya Panchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhyeva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Radhanatha Swami Namne Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Shrimati Vedanta Swami Namne Namaste Saraswati Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Nivadi Paschata Samparati Vachalam Pangum Langhede Girim Yat Kripada Mahamande Shri Gurundi Dharanam Paramananda Madhavam Shri Chaitanya Ishwaram Hari Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. So welcome. Hope you all had nice celebration for Sri Radhashtami and happy Parshva Ekadashi fasting. It's also the auspicious occasion of Vamana Dwadashi and also fasting for Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur. So a lot of auspicious occasions coming together. Again, by the Lord's mercy, giving us an opportunity to hear and chant His glories on these auspicious days. So we are continuing our Pravaha, our flow of the Lila of Lord Chaitanya, Chaitanya Pravaha, as described in Chaitanya Charitamrita. Last few classes, which was chapter 8, almost, I think we took around 4 classes or maybe 5, I am also not sure how many classes we took, but that was the chapter of the wonderful conversations between Lord Chaitanya and Srila Ramananda Rai. So the river, which usually flows very fast, slowed down, because when we discuss philosophy, we cannot flow at the same speed as the pastimes. Otherwise, the flow will go above our head. So philosophy is very important to understand. Siddhanta baliya chitte nakar havalas ya hoite Krishna lage sudruda manas. Chaitanya Charitamrita itself says that. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, not in this chapter, says elsewhere, that never be lazy to understand the philosophy. Why? Because when one is intellectually convinced by understanding the proper philosophical conclusions, when the intelligence is convinced, one is able to apply oneself to the spiritual path with focus and determination. Because it is the nature of the human mind. If the intelligence is not convinced, the intelligence will not control the mind to stay focused and determined on a particular path. And especially in the path of Krishna consciousness, very important to understand the right conclusions of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. And especially in our school, because we are all aspiring for something very unique. Correct? For example, you say, I want a cake to eat as a sweet. But sometimes just by saying that I want a cake to eat is not enough. Because there are thousands of types of cakes. So you have to be very specific. You want a cheesecake, you want a fruit cake, or you want a sponge cake. And within each of these categories, there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sub-varieties. So amongst the perfections of spiritual life, there is so much variety. Vadanti tattva vidastatvam yajnanam advaim brahmeti paramatmeti bhagwaneti shabda. But even within Bhagwan realization, in the realm of devotion itself, there are so many flavors, and we discussed that in the last chapter. There is the mood of the Vaikuntha, there is the mood of Ayodhya, there is the mood of Kurukshetra, there is the mood of Mathura, there is the mood of Vrindavan. And even within the mood of Vrindavan, there are 5 rasas. And we kind of discussed what is the pinnacle. So we want something very, very specific. And we discussed in the last chapter why that is the highest and what is the path to attain. So it's a very, very wonderful conversation. Please read it many, many times to be familiar with the principal tenets of Lord Chaitanya's teachings. So we are now moving to the next chapter. Today's chapter is chapter 9. The chapter is entitled Lord Chaitanya Travels to the Holy Places. So if you remember, the context of our last class was that the Lord, within his South India Yatra, the Lord left for South India under the pretext of trying to find his elder brother Vishwarupa, who had taken sannyas and was known by the name of Shankararanya Swami. But they had never heard of him since he left home. And he left home without telling anybody. So under the pretext of searching for him and also under the pretext of traveling to the holy places, Lord Chaitanya embarked on the tour of South India. Very soon after his sannyas, after he came to Puri, within a short while, within a few months, took permission from all the devotees and said, I need to go. This particular location on the bank of the Godavari at Vidyanagar was a very, very prominent place, and that's why a very detailed explanation of the conversation between Lord Chaitanya and Ramananda Rai is explained. In fact, one of the things which is significant about Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's South India trip is not only did Lord Chaitanya visit practically all holy places, not only did he preach to so many people, the Lord also met and gathered so many of his eternal associates whom he had placed in various parts of the southern part of India. He met them on his tour, and then he re-established his relationship with them. Many of them later came back to Jagannath Puri. Raman Rai is, of course, an excellent example. Then there is Paramananda Puri, then there is Sri Rangapuri, then there is Gopala Bhatta, so many others. And we will discuss all these as we go. So that was another thing the Lord achieved. And of course, the preaching of Krishna consciousness, which was amongst his primary purposes. Because soon after the South India Yatra, the Lord would restrict himself, as we will discuss later, more or less to Jagannath Puri. He does some short trips nearby after that, but after that, pretty much the Lord is restricted to the area of Puri. And the last 18 years of the Lord's manifest pastimes, he spends exclusively in seclusion. So apart from the Lord's preaching as a Grahastha in Navadvip, his South India tour is amongst those small but very intense periods where the Lord extensively preached, where the Lord reached out and preached. And practically alone. He had one assistant, Krishnadas, which we also discussed. But other than that, I mean, he was a very meek, humble Brahmana. So Lord Chaitanya was pretty much by himself, uninhibited, the way he wanted to conduct himself, the way he wanted to preach, the Lord would do. So almost 2 years the Lord spent in his South India. So this chapter is actually describing a significant part of his South India trip. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami mentions at the beginning of this chapter, he says that the South Indian people were strong like elephants. So he's glorifying the South Indian people. But, he says, they were caught in the mouth of the crocodile of Mayavad philosophy, of Jainism, Buddhism, and other philosophies which deviate from pure Krishna consciousness. So just like Gajendra was entrapped by the crocodile, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says that the people of South India were somehow entrapped in these various philosophies. But with the Sudarshan disc of the mercy of Lord Chaitanya in the form of his holy name, cut the head of this crocodile and liberated all these people and gave them pure Krishna consciousness. So very nice comparison. So in that way he converted. So as I mentioned earlier, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's trip to South India is especially noteworthy because in this trip, the Lord visited many holy places. Actually, there's a map. I don't have it handy here. Maybe another time I'll show it to you. How the Lord traveled, because he started from P and then he went southwards. More or less, even though I cannot say he traveled exactly along the ocean line, but he kept close to the coastal line, not very far away. And he traveled south along the east coast, went all the way to the southern tip, Kanyakumari, and then he started his journey upwards along the western coast of India. And various, so along the place, all these various places are mentioned. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami mentioned at the beginning of this chapter, please understand, I am only going to give a synopsis of where all the Lord visited. Only prominent places, and I'm not giving all the places exactly in chronological order because there are just so many countless places the Lord visited. I'm mentioning only a few prominent ones. Lord visited thousands of holy places, and in those places he converted thousands of people into becoming Vaishnavas. Wherever he would go, he would introduce people to the chanting of the names of Hari and Krishna. So he would go to these villages, these holy places, I mean, both in the holy places and in between holy places. And we already discussed this. What was the standard protocol? You would catch hold of one person, say, chant the name of Krishna. Worship Krishna. Make Krishna your life and soul. So that person would go into ecstasy and start chanting. And he would say, now you go and tell others. Follow what I told you. So Lord Chaitanya's parampara system would spread very fast. Because it would not take years and generations. The person would go, along the way he would meet somebody, he would tell them, they would be on fire, devotional fire. They would go and tell others. They would go back to other villages, they would talk to others, they would be immediately affected by the virus of Krishna Prem, highly contagious, imbued by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. Instant transformations. So in the presence of Lord Chaitanya, the spreading of Krishna consciousness was so rapid. It is said countless people became devotees. Practically in the villages where Lord Chaitanya personally went, it is said almost, you can say, for all practical purposes, everybody in that village would become devotees. They would give up their fruitive mentality. They would give up their attraction towards impersonal philosophy. They would give up their, if they had any affiliation or attraction towards voidism, impersonalism, would give that up and become pure devotees, being influenced by Lord Chaitanya's. Of course, in South India, there are various prominent Vaishnava sects also. There are the Ramanandis, who are followers, who are worshippers of Lord Sri Ramchandra. They are also known as, there are also the Tattvavadis. There are also the Sri Vaishnavas, the followers of Ramanujacharya, especially based around the area of Sri Rangam, much of South India. So for those who are already devotees, Lord's program was not to make them devotees, but rather to give them a higher realization in bhakti. So to those devotees, the Lord gave his mercy by introducing them to Shri Sri Radha and Krishna as the highest object of devotional service. So in that way, the Lord was merciful, both to the ordinary people, non-devotees, materialistic people, and we as impersonalists, if they were willing in some way to accept the Lord's mercy. And also to the devotees, because he was encouraging everybody to receive what he wanted to actually give. What is that? Your Krishna Prema. Especially that which is following in the footsteps of the gopis. It is said, as the Lord toured in South India, he would especially chant, because in South India, Lord Ram is so popular. Lord Ram is popular in the north also, but because especially he was dealing with the Ramanandis, the Tattvavadis, and so many others. The Lord would especially sing Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava, Rama Raghava Pahi Mam, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava, Krishna Keshava Raksha Mam. So this also we discuss. So as he would go along the path, and those who would see the beautiful form of the Lord, those who would hear this kirtan, not only sweet but imbued with such devotion, you cannot even imagine what it would be like, a sight to behold and hear Lord Chaitanya passing by on the streets. Those who would see would be enamored. And we can only imagine what kind of good fortune the living entities who were personally present at that time would have. That the Lord of Goloka, the Supreme Original Personality of Godhead, is touring around all over India, giving pure devotional service. So looks like all of us were busy somewhere else. So this is our second chance. Perhaps we may not get transformed in 5 minutes or 1 hour, but nonetheless, that mercy is still available. So hopefully we don't miss this chance. So there are many places which Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami mentions that Lord Chaitanya visited. He says that they were unlimited. He said practically as the Lord was touring, every small and big holy place the Lord would visit. He would go here, there, any, in India, Bharat Varsha, now we should call Bharat. So you see, as soon as we completed the discussion of our 5th canto of Bhagavatam, India has become Bharat now. Wonderful. Good timing. So to say, the Lord visited, hundreds of, in India, practically in every nook and corner. There'll be some famous holy place which is linked to either the Lord or his pastimes or one of his devotees or the devatas, every other place, including big cities. That is the great fortune of India. It's unimaginable. So it is said the Lord was visiting practically all these places. And when the Lord would visit there, it is said not only would he convert and elevate the people whom he would meet there and preach to them there, he said the Lord would also purify those holy places. So there is a beautiful verse in the Bhagavatam. Now this is not mentioned especially here, but briefly the CC mentions that the Lord also purified those holy places. Because in holy places, so many sinful people come and they deposit their sins. And the pure devotees who come to those places, they actually destroy the sins. Tirtham kurvanti tirthani svantastena kadabrata. This is a verse from the Bhagavad. Now, of course, the Lord is not just a great soul. The Lord is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Lord being all pure, further glorified the holy place. Because if a place is already holy, now it has become more holy because Krishna, the original Supreme Personality of Godhead, has visited that place. Correct? So practically all these holy places have become even more special. For example, if there is a temple of Durga Devi, so that temple is auspicious and holy because of the deity of Durga Devi being worshipped there. But when Lord Chaitanya visits there, for example, Lord Chaitanya visited Kolhapur, and we'll be discussing that later. In Maharashtra, after he went south and he came back up, he went through Maharashtra. He visited Kolhapur, where he took the darshan of Mahalakshmi there. So now that place is even more glorious, because in that temple, Lord Chaitanya has personally visited and danced. So the Lord practically did not spare any holy place across the length and breadth of India. He has scattered the dust of his lotus feet all over. And Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says, please don't ask me to list all the places because I can't. So I'm going to mention only a few prominent. So as the Lord was going south from Vidyanagar, he was walking along the road, arrived at the bank of a river known as the Gautami Ganga. And then they said Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took his bath there. After taking his bath, he went and saw the beautiful darshan of Mallikarjuna Tirtha. Mallikarjuna is the name of Lord Shiva. So this is a very beautiful pastime of Mallikarjuna. We will not discuss that today. But he went and took darshan of this deity of Lord Shiva, and he induced everybody there to chant the holy names. So Lord Chaitanya was always pleased, very happy to visit temples of Lord Shiva. He would visit temples of Lord Shiva also, of course, all the Vaishnava temples also. He would visit Lord Shiva's temples also. He would visit Durga Devi, Parvati temples, Mahalakshmi temples. So he was very happy because whenever Lord Krishna sees Lord Shiva, he sees him. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami says he sees him as the servant of Rama. And that is the meaning of Rameshwara. Some people think that Rameshwar means Ramasya Ishwara, the Lord of Ram. The real meaning of Rameshwar is Ramaha Ishwaraha Yasyasa, he whose Lord is Ram. So Lord Shiva is very happy to see Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu is very happy to see Lord Shiva. So Lord Shiva and Lord Krishna or Lord Hari, they have a very, very special relationship. There are two forms of the absolute truth which are manifested eternally for different functions, and they have a very, very sweet relationship amongst them. So after visiting the Mallikarjun Tirtha, it is said that the Lord went to Ahobala Narasimha. This is a very beautiful Tirtha in Andhra Pradesh. So Ahobala Narasimha is a very, very special Tirtha. We have visited there. It is, I can spend so much time talking about Ahobala Narasimha Tirtha, but there is a Nava Narasimha Kshetra there, 9 prominent Narasimha temples. So I've been fortunate. I was able to visit personally all those 9. Went with Zolnasa Radhanath Maharaj. This was long back. This was even, was it in 1999, I think? Not 99, sorry. 97, 98, sometime like that. 98 perhaps. So very, very remote place, but a very special place where beautiful pastimes happen. That is where the Ugra Stamba pillar from which Narsingadev appeared. That pillar is there, and there are very beautiful places. So Ahobala Narasimha is a very special Narasimha, very mysterious, special deity of Lord Narasimha. It is said when Lord Venkateshwara married Padmavati, and the marriage of Tirupati Balaji, Venkateshwar happened. It is said the feast for that particular marriage, the Naivedya was offered to Ahobala Narasimha before being distributed to all the attendees. So anyway, it's a very special place. So the Lord went there and he took darshan. So after taking darshan of Ahobal Narasimha, it is said the Lord visited a place known as Siddhavata. So Siddhavata is a place where Lord Ramchandra has performed his pastimes. He saw the beautiful deity of Ramchandra and Sita Devi there. And the Lord, offered his prayers and took beautifully the darshan of Lord Ramchandra. It is said as he was taking darshan and paying obeisances, one Brahmana, very pious Brahmana, was a devotee of Lord Ramchandra. He approached Lord Chaitanya and he invited Lord Chaitanya for lunch. So as we discussed, this was the normal modus operandi of the Lord as he would travel. The Lord would inspire some great devotee to come to him and invite him, and the Lord would take that opportunity to accept his service and bless him with what the Lord had to offer, which is Krishna Prem. So this Brahmana was very, very special. He was actually a very, very great devotee of Lord Ramchandra. It is said his tongue would always continuously chant Ram Nam. It is said he did not utter any other word. He would always be chanting Ram, 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 Ram. So Lord Chaitanya visited his home, graced his home. That way he gave him his association and gave him his blessings. And then after that, the Lord actually proceeded ahead. The Lord then visited the place known as Skanda Kshetra, where there was a temple of Kartikeya Skanda. He visited there. From there, it is said he went to Sri Matha, where there is a deity of Lord Vishnu in the form of Trivikrama or Vamana, is Vaman Dwadashi. So after visiting the Trivikram temple, it said the Lord again circled back and came to Siddhavata. So Siddhavata is the place where the Rama devotee Brahmana was situated. So he again visited the house of that Brahman. And this time when Lord Chaitanya went back and visited the house of that Brahman, he observed that this Brahman is now always chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. So Lord Chaitanya was very surprised. Are Baba, what happened to you? You were always so addicted to Ram Nam. Now, how come you have changed? And now you are chanting Krishna Nam. So very humbly, the Brahmana replied, oh, my dear Lord, this is all because of your influence. Actually, from childhood, I know nothing but Ram. But since I saw you, the holy name of Krishna has become fixed on my tongue. And now I'm always chanting the name of Krishna. And then he explains to Lord Chaitanya, he said, right from my early childhood, I've been hearing the glories of Ram Nam. For example, he quotes the verse from the Padma Puran. Ramante yogino anante satyananda chidatpani iti rama padena sau parabrahma vidiyate. The supreme absolute truth is known as Rama because the transcendentalists take unlimited spiritual pleasure by meditating upon him. So it's true that the name of Rama is extraordinary, but the scriptures glorify the name of Krishna in a very special way. Shira bhuvavachakah shabdo nascha nivrittivachakah tayor aikyam param brahma Krishna iti abhidiyate. This is mentioned in the Mahabharata. What is the meaning of the word Krishna? So the definition of Rama is given in Padma Puran. The definition of Krishna, the word Krishna, why God is called Krishna, is given in Mahabharata Udyoga Parvas, chapter 71, verse 4. The translation is like this. The word Krish is the all-attractive feature of the absolute truth. And Na or Na means spiritual pleasure. So when Krish becomes attached with Na, it becomes Krishna, and that is why it indicates the absolute truth. So the word Krishna means absolute attraction and also absolute pleasure. And then the very, very special verses are quoted from scriptures that yes, while Ram Nam is perfect, Ram Nam is Taraka Brahmanam. One can achieve liberation and Vaikuntha by chanting the name of Ram. In the scriptures, it is said that 3 names of Ram is equal to 1 name of Krishna. And then he quotes 2 verses. Rama Rameti Rameti Rame 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 Manorame Sahasranama Tattulyam Rama Nama Varanane. So this is also from Padma Puran. Lord Shiva is telling Parvati Devi that, "Oh Varanana, I chant the name of Ram. Oh Rama Devi, I chant the name of Ram because I enjoy this beautiful sound. This name of Ram is equal to Sahasranama Tattulyam, is equal to chanting the names of Vishnu 1000 times." And after that, they say, he quotes another verse. The Brahmana quotes another verse from the Brahmanda Purana. He says, "Sahasranam nam punyanam trir avrutyatu yat phalam ekavrutyatu krishnasya namaikam tat prayachati." That if you chant the names of Vishnu 1000 times and then you repeat that procedure 3 times, which means 1000 plus 1000 plus 1000, means 3000 times. That benefit is equivalent to chanting the name of Krishna once. So while the names of the Lord are powerful, while there are potencies, even within the names of the Lord, there are varying potencies. So 1000 names of Vishnu equal to 1 name of Ram. 3 name of Ram is equal to 1 name of Vishnu. So the Brahmana explains like this and he says, now the name of Krishna is fixed on my tongue. So I was addicted, the Brahmana says, to chanting the name of Ram. But I was not able to chant the name of Krishna. But you have been so kind to me. By your appearance, you have elevated me to the stage of chanting the name of Krishna. In fact, by your appearance, the glories of Krishna's name erupted or awoke in my heart. And I can understand that you are Krishna himself. This is my conclusion. And having said that, the devotee fell at the lotus feet. So some of these devotees, like we discussed, whether it was Ramandra or others, those were very advanced devotees. They would understand that this personality is not just a sannyasi or a saint, that he is Krishna himself. So, of course, Lord Chaitanya would be very careful whenever such things happen. He would tell that particular devotee that, yeah, you are very smart. Being a great devotee, you have figured out who I am. But please do not reveal my reality to anybody, because I am a concealed incarnation. So it is said, after he spent the day with this particular Brahmana in Siddhavata, he said next day the Lord stayed over, gave his blessings. The next day he arrived at a place known as Vriddha Kashi. So Vriddha Kashi is also a temple of Lord Shiva. After spending some time in Vriddha Kashi, the Lord progressed further. There was one village, it is said, where it was full of Brahmanas. The Lord spent some time and took some rest there. And it is said that because Lord Chaitanya had such an extraordinary, attractive effulgence, attractive personality, millions of people would come to see him. If the Lord would wait at one place, the Lord would most of the time be traveling. Sometimes he would just stay overnight at a particular place. But if he would stay at some place, so quickly the news would spread that many, many thousands and millions of people would come to see him. He said when the Lord was at this village of the Brahmana, so many millions of people came that could not even count. So everyone was attracted to him, and they were attracted to his form, to his beauty, to the love for Lord that Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu exhibited. It is said simply by seeing him, they would start chanting the holy name of Krishna, and everybody would become a devotee. So this is one of the characteristics of a first-class devotee. a first-class devotee is one by simply seeing whom one feels inspired to chant the name of Krishna. That is the kind of influence that a pure devotee exerts. That in their presence, we are automatically inspired to chant Krishna's name, automatically inspired to remember Krishna, automatically inspired to surrender to Krishna. That is the kind of influence they have. Of course, in this case, Lord Chaitanya is not just a devotee, but rather the Supreme Lord. So the influence was to an extreme degree. Millions of people would get attracted to chanting the holy names. So in this way, the Lord continued his travels, and as he would travel, would come across various kinds of people who had various kinds of philosophies, but he would transform all of them to bhakti. So different philosophers came from different backgrounds. It is said some of them were Tarkika, which means logicians, who were following the school of Gautam or Kanada. There were Mimamsikas, who were the followers of Jaimini. The Mayavadis were the followers of Shankaracharya, the followers of Sankhya philosophy, of Kapila, the followers of Yoga of Patanjali. Some were following the Smriti Shastras, some were following the Puranas and the Tantras. No matter what different types of philosophical systems they were following, once they would come in contact with Lord Chaitanya, their heart would become transformed. So bhakti is like that. Bhakti is very attractive because all other things, even religious and spiritual practices, are still external to the soul. But bhakti is very much the nature of the soul. So when the soul is touched by bhakti, the profound impact that contact with bhakti has on the living entity can immediately see the superiority of loving devotional surrender to the Supreme as so much higher than any other spiritual path that they can. And especially in this case, when they had direct contact with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it became very, very evident to them, and very easily they transformed themselves and took to the process of devotional service. So practically, as the Lord toured South India, he would turn villages after villages after villages. It is said, so much of South India, the Lord converted into Vaishnavas. It is said, as the Lord continued his travels from Skanda Kshetra, he visited a place known as Trimatha, which we discussed. He visited the deity of Trivikrama. After that, he came to Siddhavata. Then at one place, it is said, as the Lord was actually transforming so many of these various kinds of philosophers from various schools, he would also encounter Buddhists. So at one place, a group of Buddhists headed by their Buddhist guru, their teacher, they came and approached Lord Chaitanya. Normally, Lord Chaitanya would not engage in discussion with the Buddhists because the Buddhists reject the Vedas. But this group of Buddhists were very proud. So the Lord decided to speak to them or allow that encounter to happen just to crush their false pride. Of course, the Buddhist approach to spirituality is based on logic and argument. They do not have a concept of scriptures. In fact, they reject the Vedas. They even reject that there is any God. They do not even accept the existence of a soul which is transcendent to matter. They have a philosophy of nihilism, or to annihilating one's individual identity, which they believe is produced by the combination of matter in a particular situation, both gross and subtle. So this kind of philosophy is actually another form of atheism only. Lord Chaitanya generally doesn't like to discuss with the Nastika. So Buddhism, Jainism are considered Nastika philosophies. So this group of Buddhists, headed by their teacher, they came. So it is said amongst the Buddhists, there are some 9 principal teachings. So this Buddhist leader, he approached Lord Chaitanya, he challenged Lord Chaitanya, and he made a lot of arguments to put forth his principles of spiritual life, 9 principles. And very easily, with a strong logic, because Lord Chaitanya is the supreme logician. When he was Nimai Pandit, people would run away from him from debate. So effortlessly, Lord Chaitanya, through logic, through the same weapon which they used, he actually defeated all their arguments and established devotional service. So they were totally dumbfounded. They couldn't figure out, how they got totally, smashed and defeated. In fact, the people who were around, who were watching this whole conversation, they started laughing at these Buddhists. The Buddhist leaders, as well as all his followers, they became very embarrassed and angry and envious of Lord Chaitanya. So they were very happy, very unhappy. You understand this, Lord Chaitanya is, a Vaishnava, a devotee, and they were never appreciative of devotional service. So they all came together and said, we have to somehow take revenge for our insult. So they made a plot against Lord Chaitanya. So what they did, after some time, they came to Lord Chaitanya with a plate. And they said, oh, here we have brought some prasad for you. Please accept it. So what they did is, just to trick Lord Chaitanya, there were some untouchable items, probably some meat or something like that. Inside, on top, they covered it with some prasad-like item. I don't know what it was. It's not mentioned. They brought in a plate and offered it to Lord Chaitanya. Because Lord Chaitanya is the heart of all living entities. He knows exactly what was going on. So by the Lord's arrangement, it is said a huge bird suddenly appeared there. And as they were trying to offer that plate of untouchable food to Lord Chaitanya, that bird swooped down. He picked up that plate with his claws from the hand. He snatched it from the hand of these Buddhists and emptied the contents of that untouchable food on top of all these Buddhist followers. So basically, he exposed them in front of everybody else because all the contents of the food came out and got scattered on top of their bodies. Not only that, it is said the bird flew high into the sky with the plate, and then the bird dropped that plate, which fell straight on the head of the guru of these Buddhists. And he fell to the ground unconscious because he was the main conspirator. This teacher of these Buddhist students was the main conspirator. So as soon as these Buddhist students saw what has happened and they saw that their guru had fallen unconscious, they became very scared. They panicked. They realized that, this person is not an ordinary person. He is some great personality, that he so easily exposed them. And see how immediately we and our teacher has become punished. So they all went and ran to Lord Chaitanya and fell at his feet and begged for forgiveness and says, please forgive us and please save our teacher. He will die. We have done some mischief, but we are very repentful. Please forgive all of us. And please bring our guru back to life. He's already either died or he's about to die. So of course the Lord, when somebody takes shelter of him, he is always very kind, even though they may have been offensive. So the Lord said, okay, I'll be kind to you, but you have to just do one thing. So the Lord's standard request: chant the names of Krishna and Hari in the ears of your guru. You want to bring him back from a near death situation. You want to bring him back to life. Go to his ears and chant Hari and Krishna loudly. The students said, yes, yes, yes. And they ran to their guru and all of them were started chanting very loudly Krishna, Hari, loudly in the ears, the teacher. And as this happened, the teacher regained his consciousness. And as he regained his consciousness, he began to loudly chant the names of Hari. He also came and fell at the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and begged for forgiveness. And everybody, all people around who were witnessing all this, were actually very, very surprised. So actually, Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami explains that what actually Lord Chaitanya did. When the students, the Buddhist students took shelter of Lord Chaitanya first initiated them by giving them the name of Krishna. Because he told them, chant Hari and chant Krishna. So in that way, he gave them initiation. And then the students, they went and initiated their previous guru, the Buddhist teacher, by chanting in his ears, Hari and Krishna. Then he became transformed. So in this case, the Buddhist disciples, when they became devotees, they delivered their guru, the Buddhist teacher, by giving him holy name that they had just received from Lord Chaitanya. So that is the potency of the holy name. When we receive the holy name from a bona fide spiritual master, the name is not just a material sound. The name is the living representation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When we utter that name, not only that name purifies our heart and awakens our Krishna consciousness, but when we utter that name with faith based on the instructions of our Guru, those who hear that name are also recipients of that compassion. So that is the parampara system. So after this episode happened, it is said that Lord Chaitanya suddenly disappeared from that place. In thin air. Didn't walk away. And everybody was looking around. Oh, where did he go? Where did he go? Nobody could find him. Okay, so I want to stop here. We have completed around 63 verses. This chapter is a very long chapter, over 300 verses. We have completed around 63, so we will continue from verse 64. A lot of interesting, beautiful pastimes going forward. Yes.
Yeah, Hare Krishna.
So, yeah.
Yeah, one curious question, Prabhu. Like, what is the difference between these Mayavadis and Buddhists? Both they don't get into the spiritual track, right, Prabhu?
The Mayavadis say, I am God, you are God, all are God. And, and God doesn't have any spiritual form. He is fully impersonal. And ultimately, I am also that same truth. There's no difference between me and God. The Buddhists say there is no God.
Okay.
So like what we have said, right, many times, to say that there is no God and to say that I am God are actually two sides of the same coin. Because essentially you are killing God. Correct? Yeah. But of course, we still consider that even though they are similar flavors, impersonalist, if he is accepting the Vedas, is still higher than the Buddhist.
Okay. Got it.
Those who accept the impersonal form of the Lord but are not envious of the personal form of the Lord, if they come in contact with devotees, they can actually become fortunate and develop some attraction for those. But those who are actually taking shelter of impersonal philosophy just out of envy, because they don't want to surrender to the Supreme Lord, they want to think of themselves as the greatest. Thinking that I am God and I am non-different from God is the greatest manifestation of false ego, isn't it? Correct? We become proud, right? Even in a material life, we become proud. Oh, I'm so good at my job. I'm so great in my housing society. I am this, I'm that amongst all my relatives, amongst my cousins. I am the best. In various ways, we have our false ego. But when we start thinking, I am the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that is the highest manifestation of that false ego. So actually, this kind of a thinking is very dangerous for those who are on the spiritual path.
Prabhu, another two questions, Prabhu. You had said, right, Lord Chaitanya is a concealed incarnation, right? So why is that that knowledge of Lord Chaitanya is getting revealed to all of us? I mean,
he kept it concealed until the time he was on this planet manifest, so that his pastimes are not disturbed. Yeah.
Okay.
So after that he allowed that understanding of his real identity to be understood by people in general.
Okay.
So there are so many quotes which are there in the scriptures. Those quotes in the scriptures existed even when Lord Chaitanya was there. And some of them name his place of birth, some of them name his father. But still nobody could, at least most common people couldn't understand that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because it is said the Lord covered over their understanding and didn't allow them to understand his real identity. Only very few great special souls who, like we discussed, right, were great personalities, Ramananda Rai, this Brahmana, who by coming in contact with Lord Chaitanya could understand that he is the Supreme Lord because of their extreme devotion. So in some of these cases, he would reveal in private his identity and bless them, but forbid them that this is for you, special darshan, but zip, not to reveal. Don't spoil my pastimes. So like that. So after the Lord's disappearance, the Lord has allowed all this knowledge to be available, and through books like Chaitanya Charitamrita and through so many quotes and so many scriptures, now we know. So now we know, but in that time, very few people.
Yeah. Prabhu, the last question, you were telling, like also the Ajamil pastime, I have gone through that. So whoever has that Tika and Kantimal, right? So they are not in the jurisdiction of Yamaraj, right? But people like us are still in that place, right? What happens to people like us? And the other part is there are four sampradayas, right, Prabhu? So in the four sampradayas also there are people who are Vaishnavites, I mean, who worship Lord Krishna, and they are not having this Tika and Kantimala, right, Prabhu? I mean,
They have. So all four bona fide sampradayas have their own slightly different way of tilak. It may not be exactly the same tilak like you, but all of them have. They all are supposed to have tulsi beads around their neck. They may not wear it exactly the way we wear tight 3 rounds of tulsi, but tulsi around the neck and tilak is a very standard expectation of all Vaishnavas, not just from our sampradaya. Whether they actually follow or not, that's a different issue. But this is a standard expectation.
Okay, Prabhu. Now my curious question, what happens to people like us who are not initiated, who don't wear this Kantimala? Where our jurisdiction exactly stands?
If we are, first of all, why you can already put tilak and you can already wear Kantimala. So the first question will be, why should you not wear?
I agree, Prabhu, but just in case. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, those who have taken shelter of the Lord and have faith, those who have accepted the Lord as the goal of their life, those who are seriously taking association of devotees, those who are doing sadhana. So these such individuals, even though they have not yet accepted formal initiation, they are still accepted as Shraddhalu, those who have transcendental faith. As long as they are connected because they have developed some faith in pure devotional service. A little bit. So even such people, because they are chanting the holy name, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Those who are chanting the holy name are better than those who are simply putting tilak and kantimala.
Okay.
Yeah. So of course those who are chanting the holy names, they stand in a higher position. So not to worry, I'm pretty confident that all those who are in this class will be taken care by the Supreme Lord. Not because they are in my class. They can be in any class. But the very fact that the basic point is those who are pursuing the path of your devotional service to whatever extent on a regular basis, even with a little practice, that itself is a very special milestone in the evolution of a jiva. And that even first step is recognized. And that is why it is very important to be connected and affiliated to the Lord and his bona fide servants. Because when the Lord and his servants recognize us and accept us as a devotee, then our jurisdiction changes. Correct? So, for example, right, somebody comes to my house and my guard, he has never seen that person. He suddenly sees somebody who is inside my compound and he comes chasing after him. Hey, who are you? He comes to beat him up. And I suddenly see and I say, hey, wait. Oh, he's my friend. Let him in. So as soon as I claim that he is my friend, the guard is not going to punish him. Because he's no longer an outsider, he's an insider. Understand?
Good.
Huh?
Yeah.
So what Yamaraj and his followers will look is, which team we belong to. We belong in the team of the Suras or the Asuras. So, of course, this is not limited only to necessarily just to ISKCON and Hare Krishna devotees, any Vaishnava. Those who are following the Supreme Personality of Godhead and taking the path of bhakti, sincerity in any of the sampradayas. Of course, in Lord Chaitanya's parampara, because we have the opportunity to achieve the shiromani of the prayojan, the highest possible attainment, which is pure love, Radha and Krishna Madhurya Ras. In that sense, our good fortune is the greatest. Our opportunity is the greatest. But if one chants and follows any of the four sampradayas, one can achieve Vaikuntha. Of course, Krishna Prem in Goloka you can achieve only by, like what we discussed, taking shelter of and following in the footsteps of the gopis.
Okay.
Correct. So we recognize and respect all kinds of devotees. But and all will be protected by the Lord. But yes, it is for Yamaraj it is not a problem, but for Yamadutas, it is good to have very clear identification marks. Because they may not be as bright. So why to take a risk? Yeah, but anyway, we all hope that we will not have to see any of them. Hopefully never have to see. Okay.
Hare Krishna.
So Ajamil pastime will be starting as soon as we conclude with the 5th canto. As we go into the 6th canto, the initial pastimes are the Ajamil's pastime. So there we'll discuss about holy name and all these things in greater detail. Okay, so thank you very much. Chaitanya Charitamrita ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai, Samaveta Gaura Bhaktavan ki. So I'll see you on Saturday. And have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna,
Thank you everyone. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Indulekha Mataji, Archana Mataji, Lila Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Bhaskar, Hare Krishna. How are you?
Good, Prabhu.
Nehaji, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Sri Devi ji, Sapna ji. Ananda Sundari Mataji. Thank you everyone.